created a new firewall where human insight comes at the behaviors. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behavior. So you won't
tried and true brain science.
no complicated code, just tried and true brain science at play. Social engineering for good. The best defense is your mind.
Hello and welcome to Phishing for Answers, where the carrot beats the stick and we flip the script on the bad guys, turning humans from easy targets into the strongest line of defense.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast belong solely to the hosts and guests and don't necessarily reflect those of their employers or sponsors. We're seasoned security professionals, but this is a conversation, not a custom consultation. Need specific guidance? Reach out to Joshua Crumbaugh directly.
Get ready. Phishing for Answers starts right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today I've got Chuck Orlowski with us. Chuck, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So what do you want to know? Like kind of all the different places?
How do you get into cybersecurity? Let's start there.
Oh boy. So you really want the 50,000 foot overview to that one?
Absolutely.
So in the early 2000s, I was working as a sous chef in an Italian restaurant in upstate New York and figured out that they could make more money if they offered delivery, but I figured out they couldn't justify the infrastructure. So I decided to get a few restaurants together and provide delivery for them. I found a software package that could run my business. I hated it. It was a courier package, decided I could build it myself. Failed the first evolution, lost $250,000, pretty much everything I had to sell my house, everything, worth selling, move in with my parents and try to build it again. I did. And, late 06, finished up that project. So long before DoorDash, Uber Eats, and the names I am one of the progenitors of the multi-restaurant delivery business. Finished that, did well with that. A buddy of mine at Sprint came back to me and said, "Hey, could you do that again?" I said, "Absolutely not. That was dumb luck and a lot of money." He said, "Listen, I can sell 25,000 phones to Land O'Lakes. I need this mobile, this web app, figure out what it costs you to build it, mark it up 10 times. I'll get you the money." He did. Next thing I know, I spent 5.5 years as an independent contractor for Sprint Nextel, building an awful lot of mobile and web apps for them. They get smart, bring it in-house. And I was like, "Oh, okay, great. Where do I apply?" And they're like, "You don't have any college education. You couldn't work for us." That kind of was a bummer. So I went to college late in life for information systems engineering with a concentration on networking security. Did some project work for NCR, worked for Time Warner Cable as a NOC engineer and a DOCSIS network engineer too. Spent several years with Accenture post Time Warner time, and then Deloitte, and then Ernst & Young, and most recently the CISO and BISO for GE Vernova Advanced Research. So my cyber career is all over the place. I remember initially implementing PCI before it was actually a thing, right? So I've been around security frameworks in different parts of this really from the beginning of it. So there's kind of, my story, and probably my only non-cyber job everyone gets a kick out of is in the late 90s, I provided the snakes for Jake the Snake Roberts of World Wrestling Federation fame. So I used to work for the World Wrestling Federation.
Okay. All right. Well, that is probably one of the most unique stories that I've heard. Not many of them start with sous chef. Although I have heard Buddhist monk to cybersecurity before, so I've heard a lot of different stories there. So, Phishing for Answers is all about the human element in cybersecurity, and one of the things that came up during our pre-call was your knowledge and your familiarity with CMMC. And so I thought maybe a good place to start today would be talking about some of those human elements or human aspects of implementing CMMC. And I know that's a little bit of a broad question or a broad thing to just statement to throw out there. But with that, I'm going to toss it to you if you're okay, and just let me take it from there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the human element in security is everything, right? A lot of security professionals have to face the 9 most expensive words in business, which are, that's the way we've always done it. Because, you know, in modern corporate culture, especially in your larger corporations, right, security is a bolt-on, not a built-in. And it really needs to be a mindset for everybody that, you know, we're a security first culture, because at the end of the day, I don't care what your company does. Your data is everything. And if you are not protecting it correctly, you are at significant risk. So CMMC, let's start with one of my first complaints. It's named inappropriately, especially when they call it the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, right? And putting cybersecurity as the first word, what that does for your C-suite level executives is go, it's a CISO, it's a CIO, it's a CTO problem. It's not. It's an everyone problem. The reality of CMMC that a lot of people really just can't wrap their head around is it's 35% IT and 65% non-IT. So now you have this difficult journey to get, you know, my argument is the CEO and the COO need to be the biggest people bought into this. Your CISO, your CIO, your CTO, they're all downstream of where this starts, right? So true high level executive leadership needs to believe this, needs to understand this, needs to see the value in this so that you get that top down push.
If I can add one element there, we still see people almost every day get conned by the CEO email scam and buy gift cards. And I know it's getting more and more or less and less common, but it still happens. And I bring that up because if that CEO was bought in, like you said, and really leading the charge on cybersecurity, that employee would have got an email from the actual CEO before they got an email from a fraudulent CEO pretending to be them. And that would make all the difference in the world, but it almost never happens. And it's as simple as it's a race condition, if you will, for the humans. And we still fail at the most simple of them.
Absolutely. You know, modern society has put us all into very distinct silos, and people only know what they know, and they don't have the intellectual curiosity to want to know more than what they know, if that makes sense, right? You know, this
of people don't.
This is my job, right? My job is this, and I can't see this. So
cybersecurity is not my job. I want nothing to do with it. It goes back to that whole, for the longest time, we said security is everyone's responsibility. But when it's everyone's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility. And it's that group project mentality where, you're the cybersecurity guy, I'm the cybersecurity guy. So people that work with us, if they are, falling into that group of it's not my job, they're automatically going to assume that Joshua or Chuck have them. And that is where it gets dangerous to me. And that's why I like seeing this trend where we're changing it from security is everyone's to security is your responsibility.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a better way to put it than saying your, and saying it, saying instead of everyone, it is your responsibility, right? Yeah. We're only as strong as our weakest link. So, I'm sure we could all make the joke, right? Pick any major company in America, let a cybersecurity guy walk through every floor. How many passwords are you going to find on Post-it notes under keyboards?
It's never taken me more than 10 computers before I found my first password. And that's sad.
It is. But let's circle back to CMMC for a little bit. So, pretty quickly here, this will be an issue for every DoD contractor. 48 CFR is really close to being, however people want to look at it, published, made live, whatever the case may be.
It should already be live. I mean, it was supposed to go into. I digress. Go ahead. Continue.
Oh, look, we don't even want to go down that road because we'd just be accused of being two grumpy old cybersecurity farts bitching about stuff that everyone else thinks is foolish. But yes,
I agree that it's probably not going to work perfectly, but it will work better than nothing.
I've come to a weird place in all of this. So if you don't mind, we'll travel down a rabbit trail for a moment.
Let's do it.
If we look at the latest cases, whether it's Georgia Tech, Penn State, Raytheon, some of the people that have been caught or banged for violations, and not even CUI, but DFARS, what is a $10 million fine to an $80 billion company? That is a rounding error in accounting. Those executives don't care. It means nothing to them. So there's like three options for enforcement of this. There's fines, there's prison time for False Claims Act, or I have a third option. I actually think the government should stop fining people for the violations of CMMC. And I think what they should do instead is if you get caught, depending upon the severity of whatever it is you did not do right, you lose 1 to 3 years of ability to bid on government contracts. And I'll tell you why. Because that is the only thing that will get the board of directors' attention. And then the board of directors will enforce change at the C-suite level. Because again, you're a CFO for a big company. $10 million means nothing to you. Right? Okay, we're not going to hire people. Or we're going to lay a few people off. There's no immediate impact to the people who need to be the champions for this and drive this from the top down. Now, that would change if it's like, we can't bid for a year, 2 years. That could be catastrophic. So now, in my opinion, this would create the change that we need to see. Because, sure, so let's talk a few basics of CUI and CMMC. The DoD figures it's $150 to $180 million a day, depends upon which study you want to look at, in lost IP. Well, what if the DoD took 10% of that money and put it into enforcement? Nobody stops to think about that one. That could change the entire game. And of course, another pushback is, well, it'll blow up the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base. And it's like,
maybe it needs to be blown up if they can't.
Yeah, maybe that's the point. Put yourself in the shoes of any DoD contracting officer. Would you rather have 5 companies to choose from that are doing it right, that are protecting the data, the investment into this, or 500 that you're not sure of? Because the one thing we did learn for certain from the initial phase of CMMC is self-attestation does not work. Period.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen so many breaches, and I won't name any names, but we've seen some of the primes get hit multiple times and seemingly learn nothing. And there do need to be consequences. I live in a city where there's a huge defense industrial base here. And one of the things that really just, I don't know, baffles me is that I don't see much of any news about ransomware attacks happening locally. And I know they're happening. I know this because at one point I submitted a white paper to the what is the name of that group? It is the Threat Systems Information Office, or something like TSMO. But I submitted it because they're the red team for the Army, and they were tasked with, well, how do we police and triage? And if we had a limited amount of capabilities to go test these defense contractors, how do we determine who to do it? And so we took on that thought experiment and just did a ton of open source and light active research on every single defense company in town. Just to show, hey, we can get a real quick idea of who's doing things right and who's not. And we found SMB exposed to the internet. We found remote desktop exposed to the internet. Just terrible things like that. And if they've got SMB open to the internet, then they certainly have outbound SMB open as well. And there's just so many vulnerabilities there. We found open buckets on AWS. So it was just really, to me, very concerning at the fact that some of these contractors, albeit maybe relatively small, a few hundred employees, which is small in the defense contracting space, but it's as if they had zero cybersecurity program whatsoever, and no one internal that knew what they were doing on it. And these often are contractors that advertise cyber capabilities on their website.
Yeah, that is such a huge part of the overall problem too, is, it's lack of accountability for these things. So, why should people change, if there's no real accountability for your actions, right? We can talk about the J35 versus the F35. Why did one come before the other when it shouldn't have? That is this was all stuff that was stolen from us. Most people only focus on themselves. There's not a team mission. And I think that goes back to corporate culture. Corporate culture, some places really preach we're all about our people, but get there a year or two and you'll figure out that that's all smoke and mirrors, right? So, we're not all on the same mission. Everyone is really on their own mission. I don't know how we change that, because the old joke is you can never get a person to see the truth when their paycheck relies upon them ignoring it. So if putting in...
I heard that, but it's true.
It is.
Yeah.
So you look at these executives, right? And I'm not trying to pick on them. Believe me, this is not my choice. But if when their paycheck relies upon maximizing shareholder value, right, then that's what they will do. And if adding in proper security increase costs and reduces shareholder value, here's a great saying. I say this about CMMC, it is incredible the level of mental gymnastics I have seen people do in an effort to interpret away their need for compliance. It is absolutely mind-numbing. Well, it's not CUI till this phase. Look, CUI is like creamer in your coffee, kids. Once it's in there, you're not getting it out. So, to think that you can take a project and say, well, we'll just run it loosey-goosey until we get to this phase. You don't know if you've created CUI data in fulfillment of this project or build or whatever. So everyone is looking for the shortest path, the least inconvenience. Security and cybersecurity is just seen as, oh, I got to have two different passwords. Yeah, wow, you got to have two different passwords. You have your commercial network and your secure network. Really, it's that big of a deal? It just shows the laziness and the lack of consequences that no one fears, right? What's the worst that can happen? I don't know.
Yeah. And to that no one fearing part, the rhetoric around CMMC when they first announced it versus the rhetoric around it now is night and day different. And it goes to, I guess, just illustrate or exemplify just how bad it is that no one fears it. No one even expects it to actually be implemented. And if it is, they expect it to be, nothing that's that severe. And that's the reason that I see most of these particularly like the big primes, but the defense contractors in general are waiting on getting to their level 2 until they have to. Well,
Right, which is its own level of significant problems. I mean, there's less than 200 lead assessors right now in the country. The best math I've seen is there's 26,274 orgs that will require a level 2 assessment. There's very few that'll get a waiver for this. You need 2 lead assessors per assessment. The last time I checked any numbers, there's been about 300 or so people gone for their level 2 assessment since the rule dropped in December, and it's about a 60% fail rate. And I know a lot of people are probably
and there's
counting.
no money in it right now, and it's expensive to go for. And that's the
No,
other issue that I've heard a lot of
I
people say.
disagree. It's expensive to do it. Okay. What's the difference in reality between 853, ISO 27001, CSF, and NIST 800-171 R2? You're implementing a framework.
Oh
That's
no,
it.
I'm talking about as the auditor. From the auditor's perspective, it's expensive to go become the auditor, and I've known a lot of people that that did get approved, and they are not making money off of it, and it's because like we've been talking about, it's not being implemented, and until it's being implemented, there's no money in it for the auditors, so you're not going to have people jump in and go get that certification, or at least not en masse, which means you're right, it's going to take forever to get through the numbers when it does hit.
Which only feeds, I'll put my tinfoil hat on, the conspiracy theorists that, well, when we get to this point, do you think the government wants to not have access to this prime or that prime to build this? And it's like, at a certain point, everything has to kind of burn down to do it right, or we might as well just give up, right? We might as well just open source everything and let the world have it, because
We basically have, I mean, the internet, TCP/IP was originally called the DoD model. I mean,
yep.
we built the platform the entire world communicates on, and somehow lost control of it. It's the best way I can articulate it.
Lost or gave up, because there's a difference.
Did we ever try? I mean, in the 70s, we discovered the first buffer overflow attack. We're still battling them today. And that's because back in the 70s, it was decided it was too big of a job to fix the core infrastructure at that time.
Right. And, we're in the same place here. I mean, I joke with people. I was like, the DoD, metaphorically, folks, not being literal what I'm about to say, needs to drag a couple major primes into the town square and burn them to the ground to prove the point. There's rules without consequences are little more than words, right? And that's where we really are. You're right. There is no consequence to any of this. Oops, okay, you let some of our biggest secrets go, we're gonna slap you on the hand with a couple $1 million fine and move along. It's an untenable situation that I don't know there's a good answer for, but I know at a certain point, everything works until it don't. And then you're forced to make radical changes that are 1,000 times more painful than just being like, hey, folks, here's the rule. Like, let's break CUI down very simply. The government, meaning you and me who pay the taxes, wants to spend money with certain companies. In exchange for spending this money, we have this list of rules of how we would like you to handle the data. That's all we're asking. You don't have to take this money. You can go do other things. But if you accept this, then these are the rules that you need to follow. It may be a change from the way that you have been doing business, but I think those that are the most compliant, and can go back to the government and say, hey, we didn't just do what you asked. We did X, Y, and Z too, because we care and we want to do this. I think it's a limitless pipeline if it can be seen that way. But because of the way things have been, and fortunately, our government is not exactly known for it's known to be pretty inept, right? So everyone kind of takes it.
It takes it, but does a complete about face every few years, thanks to our political system. And so there's no continuity. And there's a lot of things that it can change that you don't necessarily need continuity on. But cybersecurity, we could use a little bit of continuity there for sure.
And especially with,
you think it would be something that would be bipartisan, but it's not.
Yeah, it ain't. And it's wild because, let's go beyond CMMC for a minute. You have AI, you have robotics, you have quantum, you have some individuals that are looking to implant chips in people's brains. I'm not calling out any names here, but we see the next evolutions.
China. Did you hear about China's new alternative to Neuralink? It far surpasses it.
And, here's the next question. How much of that did they steal?
Well, and why are we not stealing the same stuff in return? Like, for example, I hear about China's new photon-based processor that is going to be the next big competitor to NVIDIA, and they've just gone full market. They're full production. You can buy it now, right? Why have we not stolen it? And it seems to me that maybe they're better at stealing our CUI or our IP than we are at stealing theirs. And that implies that maybe they're better at protecting it. And that is simply because of, what we're talking about, the contractors, I think, more than anything else, that just not properly protecting what they're working on.
Well, I mean, look, without, politics is the third rail of the world. And just to quantify this, I am a political atheist. I think the left and the right are two cheeks of the same ass arguing how deep the hole is. I have no use for either side. But what is very obvious is a lot of other countries have significantly better OPSEC than we do. And we could name some really interesting events in the past, couple years, between a couple different countries at war, between a pager incident, between what you're bringing up about China. It seems that the U.S. is no longer very good at OPSEC. And I just don't know that there's the political will or the social will within our country to make the changes necessary to do that. Most of these other countries that have much higher OPSEC don't seem to have the level of integration of non-native citizens into their societies that we do. And I know that that's a hot button topic, but the reality is, how would you or I get into China and, do this? They don't allow that, or, any number of other countries. So
I don't know that. I mean, I don't think that much of it's actually coming from insiders, and the numbers support that. Right. It's mostly breaches because we are not doing things properly, and most often it's not malicious. It's just laziness that bites us in the ass every single time.
Well, I would kind of dispute that. I'm sure you've seen the cases of the Chinese researchers that have brought in diseases through our educational system in an effort to poison our crops, right? Like, that was a really scary thing for me to look at. Two different cases. They're caught with this stuff that if it got into our grains.
I'm not saying that there's not physical. I'm just talking from the cybersecurity perspective. When we look at the intellectual property theft in particular, most of this is happening through more what I would deem traditional cyber attacks. So
true, but they do need a certain level of insider. There's a certain level of insider knowledge that's required to help with that. So, I've always been a person that's like, insider threat is one of the biggest concerns as a security leader, because at the end of the day, your employees are they're only loyal to their paycheck, and if somebody offers them enough money, that loyalty is conditional.
Well, I think that the insider threat in and of itself is one of those hot topics as you start collecting all of that data on individuals. But I don't think we have time to go into another hot topic today, given that we're already at 30 minutes, and I try to limit the episodes just to 30 minutes if we can. But before we wrap it up, any final thoughts today?
Yes, my final thoughts will leave a teaser for someone to potentially deal with later. And the final thoughts are AI is Promethean fire. And I think that we need to be incredibly cautious on how we go forward with it. I think it has the capacity to help us, especially in the compliance space. But by the same token, if we rush too fast into this, by the time we realize we've made mistakes, it may be catastrophically too late.
As much as I agree, I think two things. You can't close Pandora's box, and it's already been opened. But the other part there is that from a business perspective, not cybersecurity, but from a business perspective and just remaining competitive in a global scale, the way I see it is every business sort of has to adopt AI right now, or they're going to fall behind their competitors and they're going to go under.
That is true, and that's why I say we need to be careful how we approach this. You know, as far as CMMC, I hope everyone takes it serious. I don't see how it's stopped, you know, and at
I just
some
wish
point
the government would take it serious first. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, what the government takes serious seems to change like my socks on a daily basis, and sometimes twice a day if I make it to the gym. So, you know, it's the attention span that the government needs to work on in terms of taking things serious and the follow through, right? It's one thing to, you know, kind of be like your dad and yell at you and tell you, don't do this again, but, you know, you got to follow through.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolutely just fabulous episode. And you have a great day. For those of you joining remotely, I will see you, I think, next week. I haven't actually looked at the calendar for the rest of the week, but I will see you guys later. Thank you.
Pay up now. Yeah. Pay up now. Yeah. And everybody just can't fight the things I want you. And I get ready. This white for a mob and it's me. Hey, it's me, your CFO. No time to ask, just wire $5 million. It's a simple task. Oh, and by the way, I need a jet by noon and a diamond Rolex to match my tune. It's me, your CFO. Send that dough. I need $1 trillion and a golden chateau. Trust my voice, I'm legit, don't doubt. Now send the cash before I freak out. It's me, your CFO. It's urgent, bro. And